and welcome to the podcast for today of the New Earth Conscious Creators. I said it totally different this morning because, I can. Anyway, I'm here now with my beautiful two co-hosts. Yay! Of course, there's the gorgeous, beautiful Isabel Hunt. And then there's also the gorgeous and beautiful Peter Paul Parker. Hi, guys. How are you?
Really good.
Very good, very good.
Awesome. One of these days, we're going to get one of those side pieces of equipment. We're going to have silly music and all sorts of stuff to go along. We'll be like, our favorite morning show or evening show, as the case may be, Peter. But pointing out that you are in the UK. So I know just before, as is our way, just before we got started, we're like, what are we talking about today? And we've come back to a topic that we had mentioned a couple of episodes ago, and that was how we have a tendency as human beings to take teachings and sort of bend them to what it is that works for us. And I think this is a pretty hot topic, really, and I think it could be really loaded. So first of all, I think we'll set the precursor. None of us are judging. We're not making anybody wrong. It's got nothing to do with that. You be who you are, right? And at the same time, I think it's very important to acknowledge when maybe we're gaming the system. So I'm going to say that, open it up to you guys, hop in there.
Yes. Well, it is definitely an interesting topic because we do see it all over, but I also see it with myself, if you're really honest with yourself and you're sitting in meditation and then you're just like, oh shit, I did the same, or, because you recognize in others what you recognize in yourself, right? And there's so much out there, so many different gurus, so many different ancient teachings, including, the religious teachings. And sometimes you really wonder how you fit all of that in. What is actually the core teaching of all of that? Because you get overwhelmed, you get overstimulated. And of course, when you get into that place, you start to bend it to how it justifies your own actions so that you feel a little better about yourself for not understanding what actually is going on. I mean, I've done it often enough, looking back, my work from 15 years ago is completely different. If I look at stuff from 15 years ago that I posted, I'm just like, oh, yeah, that doesn't work, Isabel. And now it's like, and you continue to learn and you continue to grow. But yes, I feel like we're in this time because we're in this transition right now into a different dimensional understanding, right? Where it just shows up more and more, where it's almost like it's being brought out on this really nice plate and saying, hey guys, this is what you're all doing. You're just trying to bend whatever you think is right. And it doesn't matter if you call yourself a Muslim, if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself spiritual, we all do it. And I think that's why we need to talk about it.
Definitely. I feel that this is enormous. I like the Gnostic take on it when they called the early Christians the people of the book, which i.e. they were stuck to the book or the teachings. Now, if you look at, I do a lot of Vedic reading. I go to a Vedic reading group, and it's just fascinating sitting there talking with them. And one of the things that have come up, which I challenged actually them being stuck to the book, because I feel that knowledge has gone through the Vedas have gone through a cultural evolving. So a lot of the words are obviously coming from the sort of Indian Indus Valley type area. And this is a conundrum that I'm going through right now, which is really interesting about this, of how I perceive it and how I feel. Now, my cat is slowly dying. He's had Clostridium and he's got like a really bad sort of bowel issues, and now it's affecting his stomach. So I was talking about this, and they were talking about karma, and you have to repay karma. So I'm going, okay, so what kind of karma has the cat been doing? He's been living his natural life. So they're saying if you end his life, i.e. by putting him down, giving him a lethal injection, then that is stopping him fulfilling his suffering. And my question with that is, I mean, that's not a solid rule, by the way. It's an interpretation of the scriptures. And my personal feeling on that is, when does compassion actually cut in? And when is it time to say, that animal's had enough. I need to put him out of his misery. So that's a really interesting conundrum, because you've got these really fundamental people. No, to me, that's cutting off your compassion and bending what is said in the Vedas to what you feel. But even the gurus say that. So I challenged that and said, well, this is surely my choice, but also the choice of the animal, when the animal is just not having a quality of life that you need to say goodbye to the animal. So that was the conundrum I'm going through at the moment, which is quite difficult. But I'm not bending anything to my will to say I want to put the animal down because he's suffering so badly, or I'm going to let him suffer because I don't want him to have to come back and do this again. So I do believe in cycles, and that we have to live through our what we're going through. We learn from everything that we're doing, even cats. But what is amazing about the cat is that he can't eat meat anymore. Yeah, he can only eat fish. So to me, that's quite a big statement, because we're in like a house of vegans. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong thing, but that's where we're at. And it was interesting to see him actually stopping and not being able to digest meat anymore. So it's just a very interesting position that I'm in, because it's made me feel that I do not want to have control over anything or anybody else's life or death. I just do not want that control at all. Right. And to have this as a really easy, finish him now, because I don't want to see him suffering anymore. He still gets up and he's still got a little bit of quality of life, but he is really, really suffering. He's hiding in the corner quite a lot of the time. So it's really made
my heart goes out to you. I have animals. I have my little domestic farm. Not really, but
yeah.
And I've always said it this way, Peter. Anytime I've ever worked with a client too that's dealing with this issue, you always know, like it's never like somebody who just decides, oh, you know what, you're old, I'm going to take you and put you down. I believe that there's something in that is not necessarily in alignment and could indeed be cutting life short and doing all that. But when you are connected energetically and the heart is there on both sides, because it is on both sides. Mm-hmm. I always say you'll know when you know, because they'll tell you, and it's them telling you. You're not telling them telling you, like you just know. So I think that is very much in alignment. And if that's bending something to my will, then for the love of my animals, I agree with you. It is compassion. And, we could go off on a whole other topic as to why we don't consider these things for people, but we understand that.
It's like,
too. We could. It's a whole other topic, or maybe another day, but it's like,
yeah, write that one down.
and the thing about the other stuff is also, right, when people bend their will to fit them, but then where other people will then project their ideology, their thought of like, you can't do that because of this. And it's like, wait a minute, because it's so easy to sit outside of a situation and turn around and say, you must do it this way, and you must do it that way, and this is what the teaching is about, and this is what it is, and this is how you're supposed to do it, and if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. It is so easy to sit outside of a situation and do that, because you're right, Peter, there's a sort of a natural sort of distance, and there is a disconnect sometimes from the compassion itself of the situation, because the person's not emotionally connected to it. Like, why have any of us ever had clients? Why do clients want to work with us? Because we're not emotionally connected to their situation, right? We might connect with them. We might align. We might send compassion. We might send love. We might send light and all of those things. But their situation is their situation, right? So this is where it's like this fine line on both sides. Do we really project? For me personally, I will always say, hey, would you like some input? If they say yes, say this is sort of where I'm at with it. This is kind of a message I might be getting for you, but my bottom line for anybody is take what's true for you and let go of the rest.
Because my mother, when my mother died, I was age of 11, and she got cancer from a messed up national health operation, which I really don't trust our health service in the UK. But I remember looking into her eyes as an 11-year-old boy when she was literally dying on a my grandmother's couch, she just looked at me and said, I'm not going to see you again after this. And I knew, and I know the same is coming with the cat. I just know that. And when it's time, it's time. Because these teachings are, because the Vedas are so enormous, right? Which is, they're saying, part of it is like the original teachings of humanity's spirituality. They're so enormous that they say, actually, it always comes back down to yourself. What do you feel? How do you feel? How do you perceive this? You've got all this knowledge now. How do you perceive this? And what is being, I think, the interesting point of this conversation, where we're going to go with this, is how people bend that to their own way. And I think that is terrible. Like you say, that it's like the old finger comes out, the wagging finger comes out. Well, this is what I think, and this is what you're going to be. Go, hang on a minute. That's your experience. Why are you firstly putting that onto me? And I like the way that you said it, that you say, this is my take on it. Take it with a pinch of salt. That's okay, but this is how I perceive it to be with my experience right now. And as Isabel's rightly saying, that our experience changes from year to year as we gain more knowledge and more insight, and hopefully tune our body into the higher vibrations that are coming onto the planet, that we see it in a higher light, where we can give it to other people, where hopefully it's a slightly higher light, where they'll see something in a different way. I think that's important, rather than sticking to the words and say, this is what it says, because it's always moving and changing.
Well, and that started with organized religion, right? Organized religion took teachings and said, it will mean this. This is the one thing. And now we must all agree that this is the one thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so we're not subject to translation. We're not subject to interpretation. But that's such an interesting conversation, Peter, Isabel, because this is where we go into the problem areas at the same time. If it's subject to interpretation, then which it should be, everybody, it's a unique experience, right? As spiritual individuals, as human individuals, we are the only one of our kind, really. We're part of humankind in this experience, in this body, but we're it. Our soul is ours, our spirit is ours. And it's like, okay, so if we agree that it's a fundamental truth, right, then we give up our free will to it, if you will. We don't do the exploration. But if we take it to the nth degree, to where we explore and then say, oh, and because, and we'll go with the teachings of Abraham at this moment, because it's very popular. People know Abraham Hicks. A lot of people tune into Abraham Hicks. I tune into Abraham Hicks. I love it. I do. It's like positive. It's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's fun, and it's funny, and it's light. Right. So it's one that I think a lot of people are aware of, regardless of what religion they may or may not be part of. And you can sit inside of those teachings and take it away and begin to behave as though, like, it all must be sunshine, lollipops, and roses inside. It just must be that way. Mm-hmm. And if it is not that way, then we take no action whatsoever. And I have dealt with people who have literally come from life at that angle, and it's like they take no action. They don't follow through. They just kind of like, I'm not feeling like it today, and away they go. And I'm going, I don't believe.
Yeah,
I don't know. I know nothing.
It really comes down to taking responsibility. I just made a post the other day where I just really struggled in the moment. I was like, I feel like I'm missing something here, because we're taking all these spiritual teachings, and often how we perceive them, they work for the individual, but the way we perceive them and how it works for us doesn't mean that it works the same way within a group setting, within a group dynamic, right? So there's this personal responsibility missing in how we are connected and how we are influencing the people next to us. So if we are, for example, aware of health, of what we eat, right? If we continue to support the companies that poison us over and over and over, just because we think we're beyond that, we're actually continuing to harm the collective. and keep the collective from being able to ascend into a higher understanding of self, because a lot of people who are not quite there yet, they will just continue to put that poison in their body, because people eat it, so they will produce it and continue to make it, right? It's on the shelf. So I think for people who are more conscious, who are more aware, and still ignore that is wrong because of their teachings that they have been, internalized,
that they're somehow higher and above it. Yeah.
Yes, doesn't support the collective that we're here to work with.
And that's the whole point. It's the whole point of this community. That's the whole point of the Conscious Music for the People Festival, the New Earth co-creators, everything that we're aligning and doing here is the whole point of like, we are a collective. We are a community. We are, for the first time in our history of humanity on this planet, with the sheer volume of consciousness, which is just people, brains working here at this time, we are dealing with a collective cloud of consciousness that we've never, ever had to deal with before. Right. So if what we were talking about is like, well, it's just about me anyway, so I'm just going to go do it. And I live in my little world and that's it. I have my bubble and my bubble just floats away. Right. Then sure, you could take anything, apply it anywhere and go, this feels good. This is where I'm going. That's lovely. And in fact, I think it is one of the principles to a successful life is to move towards the thing that feels better. However, there is floating away on your bubble, and then there's also moving towards a vision that may have trenches along the way to get there, because nothing that we move towards is necessarily well, other than the road to hell, right, paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Right. It's like nothing that we move towards. Nobody said that that it would all again be sunshine, lollipops, and roses. Nobody said that. No spiritual teaching says that, hey, it's just going to be awesome and great and it's going to be fantastic. What I hear in the majority of anything that I've ever studied, listened to, read, or otherwise had downloaded is that ultimately it is ours to create. And if we get a lump of mud with a bunch of thorns in it, what feels better to do with that, right? How do we create from that? How do we learn from that? Do we turn the thorns into some kind of instrument that will help us build something? Do we create a bowl out of the mud and bake it in the sun so now we have a container? Or do we get pissed off because we have a bowl of mud and thorns, right? This is like a weird, I know it's a really weird example, but this is what I think we're talking about though, right? It's like, the teachings are saying, rise, you rise, no matter what, you rise. And my, I've been
you can only rise within the consciousness.
Exactly.
Yeah, within the collective consciousness. It's you're only as successful as the weakest link in your group, right?
In the human. So that's what really made it clear to me, and actually made me become quite an activist when I first started doing Qigong, practicing Qigong. So you talk about the three danjons, the lower danjon, which is your sort of connection to earth, your upper danjon, which is your connection to the heavenly energy, and your middle danjon, which is your connection to humanity. So it's called Chun, heaven, Ji, earth, in humanity. And to the Vedas, it's the same thing. Brahma, the creator, the lower danjon. Shiva, the destroyer of minds, the upper danjon. But the most important one, which we're all missing out on as human beings, is Vishnu, the embracer. So we need to embrace humanity. We need to embrace it, and we need to embrace it together. And this is, I feel, the crux of the conversation now. And we've lost connection with our earth. Like you were talking quite rightly about the toxins in the food. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't arsenic, but there was a toxin in the food. They were arguing, the FDA were arguing to keep it in baby food. And I'm going, no amount of toxins should be in baby food, full stop. What are you talking about? But other people go, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I'm going, it's not reasonable. It's a toxin going into a child's body. It's like when I went into a chemist many, many years ago, and I had an abscess on my tooth, so they wanted to give me antibiotics. And I looked at the label, and one of them was an E number, which was a carcinogen. And I said to her, at all costs, I try to avoid putting carcinogens into my body. And I said, can you understand that? She went, but it's only a little bit. I said, yeah, but that little bit might add up to the little bit that I take tomorrow, then a little bit I take tomorrow, which is adding up and maybe causing cancer in my body. Can you not see that? It goes, well, it's a tiny bit. Your body can deal with it. She wasn't listening to saying, my choice is not to put a carcinogen into my body. And what the heck was it doing in a medicine that they give to children, for goodness sake? Yeah. It's like, it's almost like they're devolved from all sort of lower consciousness, which is our connection to the earth. We're multifaceted beings, absolutely incredible multifaceted beings. And for some reason, we've been completely detached from our humanity. Because I think this conversation would be fine. Because if I said that to you, wow, they've got this poison in the food. What do you think? You both say, well, get it out. But other people don't. And you go, well, what are they thinking? What are they literally thinking?
Well, I think it's that they're not thinking. And I think that is the common sort of, say we have sleeping sickness on this planet due to the gravitational belt around this planet that does interfere with the higher consciousness and the light signals coming through. Although that belt has lightened energetically, it's still there, thankfully, gravitationally, we need it. However, I think there's also, that's part of it, but I think we're getting into that sleeping sickness on a whole other level now, where these screens that we're showing up on, which I'm grateful for, because we wouldn't even be able to do this if it didn't exist.
Right.
However, for everybody that is like us that's out there that's doing this, there's all of this corporate money behind all of these huge things that are being put together that are literally bombarding our children and adults and everything with all of this information that is just whatever they're choosing it to be. And if you want a prime example of bending things to the will, if we want to just take it completely out of the spiritual context and just put it into what's happening in the world today on certain dimensions and in certain realities, our governments are a prime example of how they just bend it to their will any way they want to. And then they try to convince us that it's a good idea. We have digi-dogs. We literally have AI intelligence robots that are going to be patrolling the streets of New York. They have allowed this now to happen, and they're putting it out under the guise that like bending to their will. Oh, it's for your safety, and we're doing it with total transparency. And of course, like they're not armed and this, and it's like, why are we like? I don't know people, but I go, okay, that's really interesting. It's like a sci-fi novel, but let's look at what those sci-fi novels end up at. They never end up in a good place. So what if we're going to just take the lighter side of this, just pay attention to your sci-fi novels, man. We don't want to go there. And it's like, but it's up to us. And as long as people keep drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think that a lot of the Kool-Aid is here. What is community? If they, what is it like? Why do they need this? Why do they have to please us? Why the heck is the World Health Organization, talk about bending another thing to your will, now saying that they have to usurp budgets from governments all over the world to support what it is that they're going to do, and how they get total and complete say if there's another pandemic, quote unquote, and they usurp every government. It's like, who are these people? We didn't vote for them, and we're not being asked if we even want any of this stuff. We're the ones that are being bent. Right. So if it's happening at that level, then it's interesting to recognize everything is a mirror, everything is a reflection. Then how is it not happening at the level of higher mind consciousness, peace, and love? Everything works in balance. So therefore, we have to look at, well, how are we doing that over here? Right now, is it for a good? Or is it for a neutral, or is it for something that could be perceived as negative? Those are all the things. This is really complex thing as I'm realizing what we're talking about. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go way off into a left turn there, but it just sort of flowed through.
Well, I get what you're saying.
It's like, whoops, sorry.
we have about 5 minutes.
We got 8 minutes. 8 minutes left, guys. Let's bring it down. What do we suggest? We've talked about all these different things. What do we suggest we can do?
Well, my suggestion is to really start to focus on yourself and realize, right, what is happening in the world could be or possibly is happening inside of you as you start to release. Because I know as a young man, I wanted to control everything around me. Oh, well, I want this, blah, blah, blah. And I realized, gee, that is awful. It's like a very destructive, male, forceful energy that you use. And yeah, I burnt out using it. And this is what that energy is. And we need to heal it, pacify it, but use it, like you say, use it to bring in the world that we want, because you've got Bill Gates now doing the same thing. He's a big investor in the World Health Organization, but he's going into food. And what they're doing with the food is saying, well, we've completely messed up the farms, but we can do it better by expanding what we did. You're thinking, no, you messed that up by what you did. You don't spend more money just trying to fix what you did. You actually go back. And what's happening in this country, a lot of the farms are going back to that natural way of not digging up the earth, leaving the ecosystem below the surface be as
the earth can actually heal. Yes.
Yes, believe it or not. Yeah, it is conscious. So.
Yeah, here's the thing too. I think what I would bring it down to is, do the teachings that I accept as the truth for myself support the rise of the collective consciousness? If, for example, I choose and want to test my body, if we're really spiritual beings, everything that we receive, everything that we put into our body, everything that the way we interact with people changes the molecule structure and the atomic structure within our body. Do we want to use that energy to fight toxins all day long, or do we want to actually make conscious choices in what we receive and what we put out there, so that we don't have to constantly fight just to stay alive, right?
Yes.
So I think everything that we have, everything that we accept as the truth, we need to hold against how does what I believe work within the conscious collective in the way I take responsibility for my actions, for my thoughts, and how does that influence the ascension of the rest of the community.
I love what both of you had to say, and I was just thinking about the fool that's stepping off the cliff. That car that's stepping off the cliff into nothing. And it's like, I believe that all teachings ultimately require us to do that, require us to step into the unknown. And if that is the case, I have not yet met any human being, and human being, that it's what other beings have you met? Anyway, that have literally,
you never know,
like felt okay stepping into the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. That is not sunshine, lollipops, and roses. That is uncomfortable. So if we're really going to have spiritual principles, and let's face it, we fall down all the time. We just get back up. We all the time. We just love, forgive, accept, right? Love, forgive, accept who we are, and keep moving forward. However, there comes a point in time where going with the flow means feeling uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It means knowing what you're showing up for and doing whatever falls in front of you to do to actually achieve that, and to hold that vision with love and passion and excitement in your heart, even if it's terrifying in a moment, even if it's a pit and you're like, how do I navigate that? When you have it, when you hold it in your heart and those things are put in front of you, it has been said, a way opens where there was no way. That to me is the truth of how we use our teachings, right? Be willing to step off the cliff, because it's required of every single one of us.
Yeah, the dark night of the soul, I call it the old-fashioned words, but it's when you go through that. And actually now when that happens to me, I'm going, this is great. Yeah, I'm really having a bad time at the moment, but this is great because I know something's going to pop up. If I just keep doing the work, something's going to pop up around the corner. And there it comes. You go, wow, look at it. I didn't think I was going to be in this position. This is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And we don't, and I've got so much gratitude for that, going through that uncomfortable feeling. And I'm not saying I like being uncomfortable, but I do actually kind of in the back of my mind now enjoy them, because I'm thinking there's something good coming around the corner, even though I'm feeling uncomfortable. So I feel the more you do that, the easier it becomes to go step off that cliff and think, what the heck? I'm going to do this. And I really feel that starts to not make it a belief system, but make it a knowledge that that you're going to get through that. That becomes a knowledge rather than a belief system. And that breaks it from a religion to a true spiritual path. That's what I feel it is. So such an important point. Such an important point.
I know. I think we can talk for hours about it because there's so many nuances.
It's really good that we have a time limit, right? Really hey, Isabel, if they want to know more about us, where would they go? Where do they go?
Yes. If you guys want to know more about who we are, what we do, and what we're about, go to newearthcc.org, newearthcc.org, New Earth for co-creators, cc.org. Where you can find everything about us in terms of what we're about, what we stand for, social media, so you can connect with us on social media as well. All of that is available on the website.
And our ally, good friend, and like-minded, like-hearted individual, Mr. Peter Paul Parker, Spider-Man.
Hey.
Okay, please, where do they go to get further information? Soon we will have all this linked up, guys, but just give us a minute to link everything and do what we got to do. It may take a second. So where do they go, Peter?
I run the Bright Beings Academies, brightbeingsacademy.com. Also, we run the Conscious Muse Collective with two other wonderful sparkling souls called Collective Muse Collective, consciousmuscollective.com. And we have a new store now. We're selling merchandise with Conscious is Cool and many other things that are going to be coming up from that. So we're moving forward all the time. So you can connect me with that. Just Google Peter Paul Parker, put the Paul in, and you make sure you get me. Otherwise, you get this other groovy Spider-Man who's cool as well. But I think if you want to speak to me, you need to put the Paul in.
There you go. Yeah. consciousmusecollective.com, newearthcc.org, social media, all that. Eventually it'll all be one big beautiful collective. But let's all just remember we are responsible for us, yes, and we are part of a larger organism that is our collective consciousness, and also the earth and all life that's upon here. So just, with peace in our hearts, love, forgive, accept. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it is truly the one that has the highest outcome. And, together we rise.
Yes.
Definitely.
We do.
See you next time, guys.
See you. Bye.
Bye.